Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Mikey for this one. Amy attacks with Ripjaw Raptor. Nick controls 2 Archangel of Thune, and he blocks with both of them. How many cards does Amy draw? How many +1/+1 counters can Nick put on his creatures? Okay, so the first important fact that we'll need in order to answer this question is that lifelink ability functions by making the life gain a property of the damage. There's no time between when the Archangel of Thune deals damage and when Nick gains life. They both happen simultaneously. Longtime players may remember that this wasn't always the case. They actually changed how lifelink worked very early on in its career in order to stop the feel-bads from people momentarily going to 0 life and thus losing the game before their blocker's lifelink would be able to save them. Having the life gain and the damage happen at the same time fixed that issue. The next important fact is something that also happens at the same time: combat damage. Because none of the creatures involved have first strike or double strike, that means that the Ripjaw Raptor and both Archangel of Thunes all deal their combat damage together as part of the same game event. Immediately after this, the game has to check to see how many times each ability is triggered. Now, even though Ripjaw Raptor was dealt damage by 2 different sources, it still was only dealt damage once, since all the combat damage happened at the same time. Therefore, its ability will only trigger once. Now let's decide how many times Archangel of Thune triggers. Based on what we were just talking about, you might reasonably expect that each one should only trigger once. After all, Nick gained 6 life all at once as the combat damage happened. He didn't gain 3 life and then 3 more. However, take a look at this rule here, which states that a trigger condition of whenever you gain life actually means whenever a source causes you to gain life. Since each angel constitutes a distinct source, each one will trigger twice, even though Nick's life total only went up 1 time. I think the reason for this rule is mostly historical. Before lifelink was keyworded, and even when that keyword was first introduced, effects like this were usually worded as a triggered ability. This means that multiple lifelink creatures dealing damage at the same time would each have their own trigger that would resolve individually. When they changed how lifelink works, they introduced this rule in order to preserve that functionality. What I think is kind of weird is that, for me at least, it seems natural that if 2 creatures damage Ripjaw Raptor at the same time, you only get 1 draw. And it also seems natural to think that if there's 2 lifelink creatures gaining you life at the same time, that should constitute 2 triggers for an Archangel of Thune. It just feels wrong to me that the answers for these 2 questions are different, but I'm not sure which one should be changed. But I think that could just be that I only think that way because I already know what the right answer is. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say. Do you think one of these interactions should be changed in the rules? Now, astute viewers may have noticed that based on the sizes of the creatures from this example, the Ripjaw Raptor and one of the Archangels will die in combat. Maybe you're wondering whether this will affect any of their representative triggered abilities. Well, abilities trigger at the time when the appropriate trigger event happens in the game. In this case, that's the combat damage getting dealt, which, remember, also results in Nick's life gain. After the abilities trigger, they'll go on the stack and eventually resolve, even if their source gets destroyed during the subsequent state-based action check that happens immediately afterwards. Let's also observe that the lethal damage destroys the Archangel of Thune before any of the triggered abilities actually make it onto the stack. So even though its ability still triggers and resolves just fine, it will die before any +1/+1 counters are put on anything. To close out, let's look at a challenge question that deals with some similar trigger conditions. Let's say Amy attacks with a Mephidross vampire that's equipped with Umezawa's Jitte. Nick blocks it with 2 1/1s, but then Amy plays a spell that gives her creature trample. How many counters are put on each of Amy's permanents? Regarding Jitte, let's recall that combat damage is dealt all at once. Even though Mephidross vampire dealt damage to 3 different things, there was only 1 time when it dealt combat damage. Therefore, Umezawa's Jitte only triggers once. Similar reasoning applies with Mephidross Vampire, but there's one major difference. Its ability triggers whenever Mephidross Vampire deals damage to a creature. Even though all the damage was dealt at once, it was dealt to 2 creatures. Therefore, there were 2 instances of Mephidross Vampire dealing damage to a creature. So that ability will trigger twice. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.